right, Zig coming out on the top 10 the show. We have Ellia, Bisker, and Jeff Morris of Charming Disaster returning for their third time. The Brooklyn-based duo are multi-instrumentalists and singer-songwriters. And the music they compose together is one of a unique genre called goth folk. So, if folklore and myth and science and the occult interest you, this might be your band. Charming Disaster has a new album coming out. It's called The Double. It will be available on all streaming platforms. We're going to listen to a tune off it. This is Haunted Lighthouse by Charming Disaster. That was Haunted Lighthouse. It's off the album The Double. And Charming Disaster is the group. It's available on all streaming platforms. June 5th. Charming Disaster is playing the Foundry in Cleveland, Ohio, with our good friends Cowboy Princess Brigade. So if you are in the Cleveland area and you want to catch a really amazing show, June 5th also happens to be my brother's birthday. So June 5th, the Foundry, Cowboy Princess Brigade, opening for the great, the charming, the Disaster. Check it out. Tickets will be linked below. All right, a little bit about what I have going on before we get into this interview. I play in a band called C Level, letter C-Level. We are a high-energy funk punk reggae rock group that takes 12-string acoustic guitars and runs them through Marshall amplifiers. And we are having a single release at the Winchester June 13th. We are putting out a single with our hero Pete Francis from the band Dispatch. And what's even cooler about this single release is Pete is coming to Cleveland to help us celebrate the release of this single. And not only that, Pete thought it'd be cool if we backed him. So this is even crazier. Not only are we going to open for one of our heroes, and not only did we get to record a tune with him, but now we're backing him. Come on, this is going to be insane. So June 13th, if you're not doing anything and you're in the Cleveland area, please come hang out with us June 13th at the Winchester. Lastly, if you hear anything you like, if you can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast and any of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like Charming Disaster and sharing their insight with you. So, without further ado, this is my conversation with Charming Disaster. So, as far as and we can get into this more later, but as far as songwriting goes, to kind of dive into kind of a niche area that hasn't been explored, or probably has been, just not to many's attention, and kind of treat it in that sense as a regular, as a songwriter approach, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's always a really interesting concept, and you guys seem to do that a lot. So
we get interested in stuff. I mean, often when we're driving long distances, we'll be let's look that up and what is saltpeter anyway? Let's find out about saltpeter. It's just random stuff, and it does make its way into our work.
Since there are two of us, we do encourage each other to kind of keep those things going, and we can talk about it amongst ourselves. So that is also keeps it fresh in our minds, I think.
For sure. I also got to imagine kind of having someone to yes and each other off of, kind of keeps it okay, I said this thing. I want to write a song about octopuses and they're the just their anatomy. This is insane. And yeah, and we can call it, you know what I mean? When you got someone to kind of validate it's not just a fleeting thought, I gotta imagine.
100%. I think there's so many Charming Disaster songs. We each start the song. There's songs that Jeff started and there's songs that I started, and I feel at least half of the songs that I started would never have turned into fully fledged songs without Jeff's yes and. Yeah. And sometimes it's a little musical thing where I'm I've got this little riff in my head. It goes na na is that? Do you think that's anything? And to have somebody be oh yeah, that's a thing. We can do something with that thing. And so many of our sort of early it's a newborn colt or something that's very shaky on its ends.
Exactly.
It might never fully form without the other person saying oh yeah, that's a horse. That's definitely
That's exactly right.
No, I definitely newborn cult, I think, is the perfect way for Charming Disaster to describe the magic of the kind of positive yes anding of an idea. And I totally agree with that though, because it's hard. It's very vulnerable to take a thing and put it out in the world and, sincerely mean it. Cause the fear I feel, at least for me, is you think that's a good idea? You know what I mean? So to be in a place or with a creative partner where it's not, but rather, very subtle difference, but different, very different impact.
There's very much a sense of play, and the kind of play that I'm thinking of is the kind of play you do when you're really little, when you're like playing pretend. Like that sort of imaginative play where when you're doing it with somebody else, and like, think about like when you're playing house, when you're like really little with your friend, and you're like, oh, and like, and we can like go pick flowers like in the kitchen because there's flowers growing in the kitchen, and your friend's like, yeah, and there's like chickens that live in the flowers, and they're like really little, and you're like, yeah, and like, and in our songwriting there's a lot of we use the phrase what if a lot, like what if we
this happened,
like what if the chord here is like, what if it goes to the minor here, or like what if like we switch these two lines, like
and I think that comes with lots of trust, that you trust your songwriting partner, and you kind of, there's the trust that like they're not going to shoot down your idea, or that you're being vulnerable by presenting something, and also the trust that like if this is crap, the other person will be like, no, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Well, it's equally as important too. I like the idea of what if. It's kind of like an alternative to the yes and in a way. But like, now there's another avenue that can go down. But like to be able to like go into the sense of music with play, because like it's called playing music, but to like go down a whole Victor Wooten-ism of like it is called playing music, but it seems like a lot of the times most of the people that are doing it are doing everything but playing. It's very structured, very serious. You can't make mistakes. And like the idea of play is the complete opposite of that. It's like whatever. Like
yeah, I mean, and it's good to know sort of when are the appropriate moments for seriousness and rigor, and when are the appropriate moments for like possibility and expansion. Like we're not a jam band. Like right. We're very like precise in how we're executing the songs ultimately. But when we're crafting them, there's a lot of like letting go and experimentation.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Well, yeah, clearly, because like I think even with jam bands, like I think they're like they have a structure. Like I don't know, like you know what I mean. Like there's got to be something but anyway, like and it definitely like it all the songs, like every time I've like dove into like. It's crazy, for as much as we've chatted, I've always like had a gig when you guys have been in Cleveland, which is insane.
We're coming back.
Well, when's that?
June 5th at the Foundry.
5th? At the Foundry. Nice.
Yeah, they're location.
In Lakewood?
Yeah.
Okay. That would be a really who's on the bill?
Cowboy Princess Brigade.
Oh my God, yeah. Very cool.
And a Lansing band called Super Secret Cult Band, who we're playing with in Lansing the night before, and they're awesome and hilarious, and it's going to be a really great show.
Yeah.
And that was June 5th?
June 5th, Thursday, right. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, no, I think I can be there for that one. I don't think I have a gig. Okay. It's going to be amazing. And friend, I have friends in the band Cowboy Princess Brigade, and they're really... Oh, have you heard them at all? How'd you guys come across them?
We met Nate when we played last Halloween at the Beachland Ballroom's big Halloween show, and we got to talk.
You hit it off with Nate.
Yeah, I think we have.
What was that? What was the Halloween show? I didn't know about that one.
There was a WWOZ. Is that the local? No, WCVE.
Yeah, WCVE.
They throw a big Halloween show every year at the Beachland, and last year we were one of the bands.
That's incredible. Was it the ballroom or the tavern?
It was the tavern.
We played the tavern.
Yeah.
That's epic. That place is so cool. Like, because even if you're like, that room itself sounds really good, and like we get to play there a lot, and we're spoiled because it's a local venue, you know what I mean? And like the people are so kind, and when it's kind of cool because when you're playing the small room, you can wander to the big room and see what's going on.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it was love that. I love that big building, like that big old sort of Morin of a building. Like you know that like in Spinal Tap where they're like wandering around lost in that scene. Like I always imagine that's the Beachland Ballroom.
Well, next time when you're in Cleveland, I got to bring you to the gallery. You got to check out the gallery if you guys get a moment on the June 5th.
Oh yeah, we'd love.
Where's that?
I work at a nonprofit art gallery called Negative Space.
Oh,
And
cool.
the art Gotti does, I think you guys might resonate with. So we'll put a pin in that. I'll follow up with you guys later on that. But that's so exciting. So cool. Yeah. Awesome.
It's funny that gig last year was actually our second time playing the Beachland on Halloween, because in 2019 when we were touring with Rasputina opening for them, we played a Halloween gig at the Beachland in the ballroom. So that's 2 for 2.
That's incredible though. Like, I mean, Charming Disaster on Halloween's kind of like the perfect set in time to see a Charming Disaster show. How'd you guys get on that tour? That's one thing through our conversations I don't think we've really touched upon.
In 2019, we played a couple shows in Troy, which is where Melora Krieger lives these days in upstate New York, kind of near Albany. And the local person who was the local promoter who set up the show has become a friend. And he was really interested in getting Melora to hear us as he knew her. And so I think we did a show with him that he was hoping she would come to, and she didn't. And then we did another show, the one at the Art Center. Yeah. And he got her to be on the bill doing a solo set. Yeah. And so we shared the bill with her.
And after our set, she came up to us and she was like, "You guys are really good."
And we're like,
thanks. She's like,
so much.
"No,
you don't understand.
You don't understand. You guys are." I don't say that to people.
Yeah, she's like, actually said like verbatim. She was like, "You don't understand. That's a huge compliment."
Oh right. Like thanks.
And we're like, more. We said thank you. She's
And after that, she reached out to us.
Yeah, when they were gonna do an 8-show tour in November of 2019, and it went really well. It was really great, and then we were like, great, like we're gonna like really lean into this. Hopefully, we could do it again in 2020.
That's so cool. That's so okay. So like, how was the tour? Did you guys like hit it off even more? If that like that sounds so like intense. No, I don't give compliments. This is it. You know what I mean? Like.
She's, I think she's a very reserved and private person, and
exactly.
And I think she was a little bit wary of. I feel like she's one of those people who like people have maybe overstepped boundaries with.
Mm-hmm.
She like has like people boundaries pretty far out. Yeah. But by the end of that tour, because we're nice and cool and not creeps, like she up like.
Yeah, we would just see each other at the gig. Like,
we weren't like
we weren't in the van with them.
Right? We were sort of at the kids table, and it was like a very low stress tour for us because
they did all the promotion pretty much.
Yeah, and we just would like roll in and do our sound check, and they would have this like very difficult sound check, and then we would roll in and be like, "Oh, we've got 5 inputs, like just plug us in, we're like good to go." Yeah,
the sound person was always like relieved. Involved sound check from Rasputina.
But and they were touring as like a 5-piece with like full drum kit and harp and I guess a 4-piece. But it was gorgeous, and like we would like watch their set every night, and it was like amazing.
It was so great.
Oh my God, they were so great. So I think that also helped that we were like genuinely like really big fans of their music and like really appreciated what they did.
Yeah.
Was there any like? I mean, up until that tour, did you guys have you been a support act like that before?
No. And if anybody's listening to this
with a large touring act
and would like a support act, no, we loved doing that. We've opened for Voltaire once on tour, which was great. And we've opened for the Dresden Dolls a couple of times, but it was kind of an idiosyncratic thing where like we weren't actually on stage. We were sort of doing like a sort of lobby.
Okay. Yeah. That's still that was another thing I was going to bring up too. So, okay, but that was like so they're setting up the show, and as people are coming in, there's like that kind of like a kind of like side room, right? Or what was that like
It
for the
was like,
Dresden Dolls?
oh, it was like, it wasn't really a side room. It was like the sort of vestibule. Well, like it's where the
Yeah.
box office was. So like everybody had to pass through where we were. And so people would walk in and be like still standing in line for a little bit to like get up to the box office.
Initially they'd be like, wait, oh, this is not the Dresden Dolls. Like,
There were people who were like, oh my God, I have no idea you guys are
Yeah.
going to be here. I thought that it was recorded music that I was hearing
Right.
like before I got inside the door. You know, we had some appreciation.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was cool. It was cool to do.
So everybody got to hear like a little bit of us as they like
Yeah.
got inside.
Everyone was super
Yeah,
nice.
that was nice.
That's like, because I forget, I know my bass player has, but he did a gig like that, and like I was there. I wasn't like part of the band that was doing it. It was like at this venue in Cleveland called the Nautica, and there's like they had like a little like overhang as people are walking in, and I forget, it was like it was a reggae group. I can't remember which group it was that was playing there, but and like it was like a band that's now kind of big and they're playing in this little side stage, and then like, you know, it's like, whoa, they're opening for Sublime, and you go there, and then on the sides that, you know what I mean, like, but like doing that is such like an interesting gig because you're kind of like busking, and
Kind
it's like
of yeah,
you know what I mean.
We bring our own PA to do this.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like also one of those things too where it's like, so you're kind of busking and you're kind of like in the perfect niche for your music in a spot, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't know. Sorry.
It's weird.
We met a lot of great people that we're still in touch with.
We definitely grew our fans from it. Like, you know, I'm very against exposure gigs, generally speaking, and like I think that artists should be paid and like, you know, etc. But like as it happens, like this was a very good chance for us to like be in front of people who would be inclined to like us.
Exactly.
So, you know, sometimes those things make sense.
Right. And also, it's just like one of those things, like, it's like, we can do this. We can be on that one next. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like that, like, close to the first step when you don't know how to, like, get into the I mean, no one knows how to get into any of that. It's literally just being there. Yeah. And if we're going to just be there, we might as well be doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is rocking, you know?
Sure. My parents were always like, can you like get on like as an opening act for like a larger band? And I'm like, yes, that's
the goal.
That's the goal. Yeah.
That's like every drunk uncle at like any like house party or like bar gig where they're just like, you just need to open up for a bigger act. And you're like, I know. If only it was as easy as this plan is right now.
You should be on Broadway.
Which, I mean, it's all well intended. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like the drunkle in the situations, like meaning it, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're not aware of how anything like works, like, it makes sense, and like it's all coming from a good spot, of course. But
my favorite is when comments, like someone will comment on one of our YouTube videos, and they're like, "Why is this so underrated?" And I'm like, "Well, the people actually like us a lot. Like maybe it's not like as many people as like you. I mean, I'm glad that you think more people should like us, but it's not that people are like lukewarm on us. It's just that not enough people know about us."
That's right. It's up to you to spread the word.
Like,
you can easily fix this by sharing.
Yes.
That's right.
How do you think this happens? Like it's not like for lack of like working on that.
And like it's also to some degree, I think the person that finds that and says that is almost like finding like a golden gem, like, you know what I mean? Because like we all grew up with like, or at least I should say I grew up with like these bands that like no one really knew of, but a lot of people knew of, and you just didn't know a lot of people knew about them. And you think you found them because you found them at your own pace, and you're like, wow, this is so cool.
I think that there is a different sort of I'm like late Gen X and Jeff's Gen X, and like I feel like there was more of an attitude of like things that were undiscovered being more authentic and like more special, and like once things got mainstream, like
Right.
they were sort of over that, like it was really being part of a sort of like intimate subculture. And I think like that feeling is really different now, that like you know, people, if it isn't popular in a certain way, people underestimate how good it is. Yeah.
Right. You know what? I think you're 100% on that, because like I think now that kind of exclusivity in the sense, or special like kind of found likeness of other people are like in like, I would say, Discord chats, or you know what I mean, like similar niche like places where people kind of come together and can communicate and get the same like connection as if they would from a artist they resonated with at a show, you know what I mean? And now it's like acts and stuff and like bands and like artists to almost have to have like, to even be in the line sight, have to have like a crazy big exponentially growing following. And like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's so interesting how the art part of it kind of became not the thing that brought people in like the community is what people are kind of going to, just in different avenues. It's so weird.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, and people have like ways to do that aren't just music based, I think, more than they did when we were coming up. Like,
For sure. Yeah.
like, you know, steampunk cons, or like, you know, comic cons, or like other sort of like cosplay niche fandoms. Yeah, fandoms in general. But we have definitely found that like our own fan base has become a community of sorts, and like is one of those niches, and people are able to like make friends and connect with each other through our music, which like really means a lot to us.
Yeah.
Well, for sure. And like just you guys' music and your style and your style of music, I like, there's so many things like that. You know, like when you have a niche, and like, even if they're just the niche of, we like this, right? Ideally you find a group of people that also do it. But like, I think the kind of fandom stuff in a way, like, also opened a very specific kind of gateway for you guys too. Cause like, what's the place? Have you ever been to the Oddities in Cleveland? It's like this, it's like this kind of niche, like store with all these like wild, like, gosh, so taxidermy and stuff. Yeah. And like,
we haven't been to the Cleveland one, but we have been to many others in many other places. And yeah, that's we actually played a show at a place like that in Minneapolis a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Not that they hosted concerts, but we were like, Jeff was like, hear me out.
Yeah, you should also hear. And we talked them into it, and it was a great
it was
show.
Really great. We were like performing among the taxidermy creatures. It was pretty great.
Yeah. But we're with the folks over at the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft and Magic, which is a great place. I mean, there's some crossover of like oddities and occult stuff.
Yeah, like I like to feel it. I like to think we cover the sort of like spooky, nerdy beat.
Spooky, nerdy beat.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I kind of like, okay, to take like a really kind of abstract look at that in like a sense that's like kind of related to the kind of fandoms in a way. There's like all this culture and like myth and tale and like science that kind of blends together in those places, and that kind of philosophy, which I think is kind of relatable in the sense to like people that fall into like comics for the stories and the connection of characters, and you know what I mean, like there's kind of like an archetype in that sense that I think carries over into like the kind of more like comic fantasy stuff, into like the mythos and like oddities stuff that like we have. And like I'm sure you guys have way more thoughts and like a experience with that, but I can see how an audience or how a group of people can find both fields like kind of relatable in that sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we love reading folklore, and there's so much great storytelling in it, whether it's fictional, from some fiction that we read, sci-fi or fantasy, or whether it's, I mean, folklore, I guess, is fiction, but it's kind of touches more deeper archetypes. And I don't know, there's a lot of people that resonate with those stories.
Yes, and it's just like that's the stuff that we like.
Right. It's not targeted. It's
right. Yeah. And so, I mean, this has kind of been like a weird, like, kind of inside, outside kind of perspective, like rabbit hole we've kind of found ourselves down in this conversation at this moment. But like, it's coming from, and that's the only thing with anything, I think, going back to that kind of like 90, like I don't want to say 90s, but like 90s, like era of like bands where if you found this like niche thing, it was because you were attracted to what they're doing, and they're coming off as more pure in that sense because the rest of the world hasn't heard about them yet. This is the same thing. Like, this is who you guys are. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's not an act. It's not a bit. This is it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, if somebody wants us to sell out, we're willing to negotiate.
Yeah, no one's buying yet. But
what was I gonna say? I put a pin in that. But they kind of like shift it into the double, like into this new record you guys have out. Like, can you along those kind of like kind of philosophical trends? Where is the double coming from? Like, I was trying to like trace, like, it seems like thematically throughout all the tunes, it's kind of all over the place compared to some of the other records that kind of had like or at least the like the Marie Curie record, which kind of had a fine-tuned point coming from one kind of perspective in that sense. Where's the double coming from?
Well, it's funny. You mentioned Our Lady of Radium. That's really the outlier in our catalog. Like all of our albums, but that one have been like kind of accumulations or collections of songs, over a certain period of time. And so for all those albums, we kind of get to a certain like critical threshold of songs, and then we're like, oh, like this feels like an album's worth. What are we talking about here? Like, what are the almost like we too have to do that sort of interpretive work to see like what we've been talking about all this time. We keep talking about like dream interpretation, or like a sort of psychological approach. Like what are the hidden things underneath?
This is the ink blot, and we're trying.
Or this is like the fruiting body. Like what's like the whole like that's it's like the like what's the mycelium underneath? Like what are we doing? So so in that sense, it's not so different from what we've done in the past. But I think you're right though that like we are covering a lot of ground in this album, and the thing that we sort of ended up like figuring out in our own interpretation is it really has to do with the sense of like the other reality, like the other world that's behind the regular world, behind the ordinary world, whether that's like through magical practice or nature and like connecting with the natural world, or story and adventure and the sort of fantasy world that we find in in Trick of the Light, in Time Machine, in Haunted Lighthouse, and even Gang of Two, where there's like the sense of characters like carrying out a narrative. Like that's so much more, it's such a more exciting way to kind of interact with the world than just sort of like plodding through your day or doing the things that you have to do. And we really are trying to access that kind of magical experience of the world in the way that we can.
I think that's beautiful. Is the I guess to kind of like the title, The Double, is that kind of like double, how do I want to say this? Is that kind of like the like dual-sided reality of kind of like thought in a way where like there is these greater, more heightened experiences if you can dive into them somehow, or am I just really digging into doubling up my metaphors here? Like,
no, that's it.
That's it.
The mirror world.
Yeah,
just like
the
other side.
The reflection, the other side. And it's also a little bit ourselves as each other's double, the sort of our dual, our dualness, our shared vocal duties, and the sort of symbiotic relationship that we've grown over this decade plus working together.
Yeah, and then there's our like public persona, our live performance persona, and the
recording,
kind of expression, which are different, related, but different animals.
And then the last meaning of the double is that the vinyl release is actually a double album, because the vinyl packaging includes both the album, the double, and our previous release, Time Ghost, which was our collection of singles that we'd released over the last decade or so. And so the double album is a double album.
Okay. So there's a physical reason for this, a metaphysical reason for it.
Yeah, it just names itself, really.
No, that's all. Well, oftentimes, like, I feel like specifically in the niche of like musician, I feel like album titles like can kind of come off in a way where it's like, I don't get how this relates to everything, or it makes clear sense when you hear the record. And like, and as a group, you're always kind of like, or as a group does, like going back and forth, like kind of pitching these ideas and like trying to find something a whole group can get behind and be like, this is what this set of time is representing to us, right?
Yeah, and also one more thing about this album is a little bit more oblique as far as the album titles go, and
the songs too.
The songs too. So we're like leaving it up to interpretation a little bit more than we had in the past,
Like there's some songs that are more obvious, like Trick of the Light or like Haunted Lighthouse, but like, Black Locust is pretty oblique, and New Moon and Green Things are pretty oblique, and we're leaving a little more mystery than we sometimes do in terms of what the songs are about.
Yeah.
It's also like, even just like songwriting approach wise, so, like I find myself like going back and forth with a lot of like songwriting perspectives, and like reading a bunch of like books on like how this guy approaches it or how this girl approaches it, and just like always trying to keep like an open mind, an unfilled cup in a sense, to always be trying new stuff. And like it's really interesting because you in like the scheme of songwriting, to like a Radiohead compared to like who's very literal, like
Decemberists.
Yeah, Decemberists to a Radiohead, like a very concrete example of what's happening in the song to the character, to a metaphor on a metaphor in between a metaphor. You know what I mean? Like, like, and which one is good songwriting?
Right. Well, and there's also the fact that a song isn't just the sum of its lyrical parts. Like it's also how they sort of sit in the music. Like, Led Zeppelin have like amazing songs, but like the lyrics are kind of crap. Like
baby,
baby,
baby.
Yeah.
But they're great.
Of course. It's just
so well.
We have on occasion led a songwriting workshop, and like one thing about writing as a duo is that you do have to like articulate a lot of your practices more than you do as a solo practitioner, because you need to be able to like have a shared language about what you're doing or what needs to happen. And so something that we talk about a lot is like thinginess, like things, right? Like ideas versus things. And so like, the example that you just gave, Radiohead and Decemberists, is sort of like an ideas focused band versus the things focused band as far as like the lyrical content. And if you think of like some songs that are really effective, they're the ones where like the things really deliver an idea. And so for instance, like in Space Oddity, like, and the papers want to know whose shirts you wear, like it's so concrete, like the papers and the shirts, and like them, like the idea right away, you're like, oh, like this guy is famous, and like people are talking about him. But like to say and you're famous is like does not carry the same kind of impact as the papers want to know whose shirts you wear. And so like that kind of like making the concrete parts of the songs sort of carry the concepts of the songs is something that we kind of aim for ourselves.
I think that's a really great example of that. Like, because through all the, I mean, listening and writing and reading all this stuff, it is to kind of, the details often carry, how you're saying, the idea. And I like that kind of breaking it down to the things lead to, how'd you say it? Things lead to ideas?
The things sort of express the ideas
Things,
that carry the ideas.
yeah.
And like, and I would take it one step further, which is like you don't even really need to worry about the ideas. Like if you're doing a good job with the things, like the ideas will come through on their own, and sometimes will even like surprise you.
So, in the sense of this record, kind of like, is it also then kind of doubling in the space of things to ideas?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah. Let's say yes. I like that.
That we have like thing year songs and like idea year songs on this record too, and like there's like
that duality.
Yeah.
I love it. Oh man. So that kind of dive in. I had a couple questions about the record. So you guys worked with a circus music composer, Peter. Like, can you tell me about that?
We've known Peter for a long time.
Yeah, for a long time.
I've known Peter for like 20 plus years, and you've known Peter for at least 10.
Yeah, at least 10.
Yeah. And we've collaborated with Peter on other things, live shows. If we go through Boston and he's available, sometimes he'll sit in with us on accordion. And he played accordion on a couple of our. Oh no, that was Cornwall, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so he's not on the other recordings, right?
I guess not.
I guess so.
It seems like he.
Accordion. All right. Well, I apologize because like my memory is hazy when I think about the very first album we recorded. I feel like it could have been Peter on accordion.
I think it was Cornwall.
It was Cornwall on piano.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, anyway. So we've known Peter for a long time and have collaborated with Peter in like a whole bunch of different ways, including when my old band Sweet Soubrette had our very first album release. I didn't have a band yet, and Peter and his band Circestra were my backing band for that, my first album release show. So we had the song Haunted Lighthouse that we had written.
Yeah, we felt like it needed accordion.
Yeah.
It was obvious because it's a kind of a waltz.
Seafaring shanty. So we asked Peter if he would record some accordion parts and send them back to us, and maybe piano too, because he's also like an amazing piano player. Peter teaches film scoring at Berkeley Music School, and he's got like and he's a circus composer, meaning like he writes music for live circus bands to play accompanying live circus shows. And so it's really interesting to talk to him about this kind of scoring and live scoring that he does. Yeah. So Peter said, yeah, I could record some stuff, or if you want, figure out a time to come to my house and we could like record it together. And we were like, oh yeah, that sounds more fun. Yeah. And so, but it was like 2 years ago, we were in Boston for a gig, and we like tacked on a couple of days to our schedule, and we went to Peter's place to record his parts.
Yeah, he has like a basic recording setup, and
it's just in his house.
It's in his house. It's in his basement. He has the computer and like all the kind of recording gear, and then he runs wires up into the main part of his house
where the grand piano
and where we recorded the instruments, and we would each take turns on like engineering. So like
there was one other person involved, who's Mike Dobson. Mike Dobson these days is mostly a Broadway theater percussionist, but Bob Dobson used to be in Sweet Soubrette as well, my old band, and he was in Peter's old band Circestra. So he was like the bridge between our two bands. And he happened to be in town also because he was like playing a touring show. And so he came over and also played, but like he didn't have drums, so he was
didn't have
like,
his stuff with him.
right.
So we like borrowed a floor tom and like a cymbal, and he had some random furniture that he was banging.
And so the four of us were taking turns running up and downstairs to the basement to like run the session or produce or perform, basically.
Yeah.
That's kind of the metaphor for being a musician. No, like
it was so much fun, and it was also a lot like being a kid because like the basement or like this like hatch, like this steep little hatch going down, and so it was like going below decks to like you know
to the hold
Well, then that kind of like spiritually served the song.
Oh yeah, 100%. And but then we still needed to do our own vocals, and we kept thinking we would like do it, and then things kept coming up. Like we're gonna do it at Dobson Mike's studio in Brooklyn, and then like something came up, or somebody got COVID or something. And it kept pushed back. And so finally, like this song would have been released on its own like a year ago, if not for like all the delays. And then eventually it kind of coincided with our recording the other songs on the double, and so we kind of pulled it in and did the vocals.
It's I always feel like whenever you kind of reach out to another person in a distant location, the schedules always get stretched if you don't knock it all out in one go.
But it makes it magic when you actually do capture
100%. Yeah. Oh. I don't know. That's like, even though like how you were saying, 100% like way more magical when it happens, and it brings that like excitement you have to the track, because it's not just we did it, and you know, I mean, here it is, but like to kind of work with other people and collab like that makes it have that kind of collaborative impact. One thing like with this record, listening through it and like kind of going, it is vocally, you guys, I love how like I don't know if it just like struck me differently this time, but like the trading of lines and the I'm trying to think, the contour motion like of like where your guys' voices were going. I could be using the wrong term for that through a lot of these, but really stuck out and was sounding really, really strong. So like when you guys were kind of coming up with the compositions vocally, was this like a set of tunes something where like you were trying to get more like kind of experimental with that sense, or did it just kind of like, our voices are falling in this, why don't I do a call and response, or like you go high, I go low here?
Well, it's interesting when we write a lot of like the melodic lines and stuff. We like to switch, you know, who's doing a high harmony or a low harmony, and also other parts. So we have these lyrics. So it's like, okay, you do this part and I'll do this part. And a classic thing we like to do at the end is like, all right, well, now we'll sing them all together at the same time, like these different parts, and like have them overlap and interweave like that. And that, I think that comes from just being two people, and like, how can we maximize just what we have? You know, obviously in the studio we could do as many layers of harmony as we wanted, and like double everything and triple everything and make 3-part harmonies, but it's really how we work and how we hear it has really been affected by our dynamic of just two people. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think we just kept doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like what you hear on this album is like a vocabulary that we have developed over, like, that we've accumulated over a long time of working together. Like we have certain like things that we know are tricks we like to do when we're, you know, like what Jeff mentioned, one of them, which is the like, okay, now we're gonna like overlay the verse on the chorus like at the end, which we do in a couple of songs on this record, or like who's singing what, we'll switch, which you hear a lot on like Green Things.
Sorry, I was gonna say, is Green Things, because I was thinking as we're talking about this, there's one where you go low and then Jeff, you go high, and like Jeff, you're like in like your kind of head voice range. I'm like, wow, that fits really nice. And that was like the first time I think I heard, at least that I noted through this listen, of like you guys switching it and it really bringing an impact, at least for me. Did like I think I think it's Green Things. I could be mixing it up though. But
Possible. We do
Yeah,
a lot of
it happens in a couple
different
places.
things on Great Things. But
Yeah.
but like there's so like I feel like over time like Cautionary Tales, our second album, was the album where we began to explore Jeff in falsetto, and Spells and Rituals maybe where we started to explore like some polyrhythms and like time, like we started to get into more like dissonant stuff in some albums. Like we have been sort of like adding stuff as we go.
Words to our vocabulary.
And I feel like this album we do a little bit of all of that stuff. Like New Moon is a little different. Like New Moon we have singing parts, lines that are like sort of the same and sort of different that sort of come together and diverge, and that's sort of a new thing. But as far as the harmonies go, like we're always like when we're writing, we're like we sometimes even make like a sort of matrix or grid where it's like, all right, what are the possible things we could do here? All right, we're playing a B chord, like I can sing the B and I can sing the G, but it's like a little high for me. Like, all right, like so these are like my options, these are your options. We never want to be singing the same thing unless we're like very deliberate, like locking in on an octave or something or in unison. But like so we like we'll then like try a bunch of different stuff, and I feel like that's really where our virtuosity comes out in this like environment where nobody else will ever hear it, where we're up like all right, like all right, now like you sing the G and I'll sing the D. Okay, like go back, but like go up an octave, and like I'll do the same thing. All right, I'm gonna go like same up, and you do like low high. Like it's like it's really technical. And eventually we like muscle memory it and it becomes kind of effortless. But like in the moment we're really dialing it in.
And another thing like I don't hear so much in other bands is like I'll sing one part of the harmony, Ellie will sing the other, and then we'll switch, and I'm singing her note and she's singing my note, and the harmony doesn't change, but the kind of feel of it and the timbre, and you're like, well, what's different?
Wait, why is it different?
Why is that different?
And that's the thing we do in Green Things on the Mulberry Lipton lines. Like I'm high, I'm like low, and Jeff's high, and we switch, and that's like a subtle change.
That's super fun.
But it's subtle, but it's also very like how you Jeff, how you mentioned like the timbre really does change the intent in a sense. Do you guys?
We couldn't decide which was better, so we'll just do them both.
Do you guys have like a group or any singers that you kind of turn to for like kind of like harmony ideas or inspiration?
A good question.
Well, on New Moon, we were specifically thinking about Low, about their last album, Hey What, and in particular the song Wild Horses, where like there's this really atmospheric, kind of creepy, sometimes dissonant kind of harmony thing that happens. So that was definitely like a specific influence on that song of this album. But as far as other harmonies, I don't know, off the top of my head, like I don't know, I feel like a lot of people don't do the kind of double lead thing that we like to do. But I do love like
in country music.
Yeah, like, I was gonna say like bluegrass and country.
But don't really listen to that so much lately.
But no, I think that's cool too, because then it's especially like because we've talked about the grid before, the vocal grid.
The vocal.
Yeah, which I greatly admire, because like it's really hard to kind of like lock that in and keep your spot. At least I should say for me, it's very hard for me to lock it in and not want to switch where I'm supposed to go. You know what I mean? So that requires a lot of practice, a lot of focus and dedication to the bit and being able to the vocal bit and being able to hear it and deliver it correctly. So like I remember the first time we talked about that being like super inspired. I'm like, wow, okay, I can science this a little bit. Like, very cool. Well, you guys, it was so good to catch up. This new album's incredible.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you a question too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Is there a song that stuck out to you in particular?
That was my question too.
Ooh, that's a good question. So the waltz, definitely when I was my first listen through. So that one stuck out. So I'm glad we kind of got to dive into that. Green Things did. And like I'm trying to remember what was the other one that was like, the green things, and then I think it was scavengers. Is that? Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And those,
Cool.
like those, like I mean, I enjoyed the whole record because I'm a fan of what you guys do, but like
Hey.
in particular through listening to everything, like those ones stuck out to me.
Cool.
Cool. It's just it's interesting. Not a lot of people have heard this record
Yeah,
yet,
and
so we're
we don't, we have our things that we like, but it's just like kind of,
it's like a new baby.
yeah, we don't.
Well,
yeah.
and I also got to imagine, like, with as hard as you guys are hustling and playing out as much as you guys are in all these different settings, like one thing like that's cool about what you guys do that other bands and like other acts can't do is like I think readily is like playing all these kind of wild setups and situations and kind of fit the mold for what's happening. And like that also, when you're in those different situations, like crowd reaction is always varied, right? And yes, you do kind of like as an artist bring your show to the screen, but how people are going to react in different scenarios are always different to the scenario and the group of people. So I would be interested to know if you guys have run some of these tunes. I would have to imagine you had in like any of these gigs and got different reactions, and maybe that's why you're kind of like trying to figure out which ones, or I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Well, the live thing is such a different beast from the recordings in a lot of ways. We I don't know, like it's true, we are sort of getting used to playing these songs live still and getting to know them. There's a couple that we've been playing for a while. Like Trick of the Light's been in our repertoire since like last fall, and
Haunted Lighthouse
we played a lot, and Time Machine as well.
Right.
But like most of the other ones we're still sort of getting our heads around live. We've started playing New Moon out this past weekend. We did a little string of shows in New England last weekend, and New Moon, which we had sort of just figured out how to like do live, basically, is surprisingly impactful.
Yeah,
like,
it's feeling. It feels really good to play.
It feels really powerful. Like we have a secret we're about to share with you, and like it's gonna rock you. Like this thing we're about to do. And that's been exciting.
And the reaction has been same to the intent.
I think so. That's feeling comes from. It's like a positive feedback loop where we're like, oh, we're doing a thing and it's special and everybody's sort of like in this spell with us. And there's other ones that require a little more like patience or space from the audience where you don't always have that, but depending on what the environment is.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny because like last night my band, we played at this place, the Kent Stage, and like we came in like super super hot, like yo, well, let's go, like, and the crowd was very like at this point because we were an opening act at last night, and like the crowd was like, yeah, like it was like we had to really really like try to get this group like riled as up as we were like.
Right.
There's like an old sort of performer's trick, which is like sometimes if like you're fighting the audience for like volume or attention, instead of like leaning in, you have to like lean back.
Go back and get quiet.
And like get quiet and make them sort of like listen more closely. And sometimes a set is like that, where like instead of like pushing, you have to kind of pull.
No, for sure. I definitely, and those are wise words indeed, because like one, the dynamic of listening or becoming more quiet is actually a louder, I think, statement.
Yeah.
And then the idea of like not fighting like a force with the same type of force, but blending with it, like bend when or be flexible when they're being stiff is a you know what I mean? Totally.
Yeah, I mean it's like a risky strategy, but like sometimes it's just like the only thing that can work.
Yeah. Like, we were just also very, very excited. So that was that was the thing too.
What was the band you were opening for?
We opened for HR from Bad Brains.
Oh, great.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So we were like, what? And it was like a day decision the day before. They're like, hey, do you guys, what are you doing tomorrow? I'm like, what?
Wow, that's
great.
But yeah. Oh, and I guess I kind of wanted Trick of the Light. Like,
Yeah.
can you kind of explain how that's a re-envisioning of Dracula?
yeah. It's when we were on tour last year, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. We friends of ours had suggested that we listen to the audiobook of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and they said they listen to it every year, Halloween, and then we would like it. So I had read it a million years ago. You had read it a million years ago, and so
we were surprised.
We were surprised because it was, it's all letters really, and
it's tedious,
and it's really. And all the characters, there's really not much with Dracula in it.
Just like toward the end. So it's mostly Victorian people pretending that everything's okay.
Exactly.
Like, oh, like Mina, like she's so pale, and like it seems like she's suffered from, or like Lily, like like it seems like she's suffered from a lot of blood loss.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's probably fine.
Yeah, she should get more air. Let's keep the windows open.
Yeah, like what? It does. Are those like punctures on her neck? No, it couldn't be.
Couldn't be. Yeah.
Like. And so that was sort of like the running theme of the audio book, like our listening to it, with like all these like very obvious red flags that like
you're going to visit Castle Dracula.
Don't go.
It's obviously
it's called Castle Dracula, guys. Like or even just like the villagers will not go there. Like clearly something is up. And so it was sort of hilarious to listen to it and just be like thinking about like the insistence that everything is okay.
It's fine.
So that's sort of where the chorus comes out of. But the chorus is also the count, like seducing
like
you.
Tonight everything's gonna be all right.
Everything's gonna be fine. And so each of the verses kind of refers to like a specific passage of the book. So there's like, Dracula's outside the window, and like
there's a cloud,
and there's like, is there an eye in the cloud? Like, and there's and there's like there's Renfield with his spiders and flies, and there's so it's sort of like a gloss or a remixing of like the elements of the book, and we're kind of on team Dracula, if you can.
It is interesting, like that Dracula and Frankenstein, like the novels are like, because of the time, the like kind of romantic writing, it is very, like how you said, kind of tedious, even though Frankenstein's not written via letters. It is a very like dense, like detailed.
Yeah.
But I love it. That's awesome. Well, you guys, thank you so much for your time. I always appreciate being able to chat with you guys. I'm excited.
Likewise.
Thank you. I'm excited for June 5th at the Foundry.
Yeah.
That's gonna be awesome. With our friends Cowboy Princess Brigade.
Great.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.